God designed us to be learners. However, much of our learning and discipleship today regarding the church, current affairs, and theology has been reduced to pithy sayings and viral tweets. Just Say It seeks to help Christians go deeper on church, theology, scripture, and current issues in our world. I'm Chase Davis.
And I'm Matt Patrick. And join us and other guests for a monthly conversation on the topics that are impacting Christians in the church here in Colorado. You can expect candid conversations on the topics ranging from church attendance during ski season to Spurgeon's view of the atonement.
Welcome to another episode of Just Say It. We're glad to be with you here again. Today on the show, we've got a great guest, a local guest, Matt Olson. He is the pastor of Valley Community Church in Lafayette, Colorado. And so we're glad I'm on. I think, first of all, Matt, why don't you introduce yourself to our church as if you were kind of meeting with our church? Who are you? Kind of what's your story? How long you been a pastor? That kind of stuff.
Well, it's great to be with you and sharing some of this, the story of God's working in our lives, and getting to meet you and hear about what God's doing here at the Well is very exciting. So for me, Colorado and Boulder goes all the way back to when I was 19 years old, and I came out here working one summer in evangelistic work and drove over the hill going into Broomfield from Boulder. And the guy that ran the program asked me, what do you want to do when you finish school? I was just a freshman and finished my freshman year in college. And I said, well, I want to go somewhere where the gospel isn't preached. You know, I don't want to go to the south or to the east. I just want to probably go to Thornfield or go west. And he pointed down to the valley, you know, off of Broomfield, the hill going into Arvada. And he said, right here, look at all these homes going up. So it was, 6 years later, I was graduated from seminary, got married the next week, went on a brief honeymoon, packed up our car, and moved to Colorado. So we started a church. I was 24, my wife was 22, Tri-City Baptist Church, and that was in Arvada, and then Broomfield and Westminster. So we kind of spent the next 21 years there.
That's amazing. And so with starting a church, I mean, that's really encouraging to Matt and I, because you were how old when we started the Well?
Let's see, I would have been, 26, 27?
Yeah, I was 24 when we started. So yeah. I'm glad to know we weren't that crazy. I always say we were crazy, but other people have done it too.
People probably told you were crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so you were here for a chunk of time, but then you moved away, and then you moved back. Why don't you fill in some of that gap?
Yeah, I was here for 21 years. We had a building given to us in Arvada, which was great. Nice. It was a very, very old, very old building, but it was a building. And we were able to get started and growing there, and we plateaued probably at about 350 people. And I got so frustrated because we went to 2 services, did everything we could, and then a guy called me one Saturday and said, "I'm just finishing up seminary. Any other places you can think of to start churches in Colorado?" And it was like a light went on. I thought, we have the ability to give him 50 people. That makes more room for us to grow. Give him resources, youth, and also pay him a salary. And I wouldn't have thought of that had everything gone like I had planned. But so we helped plant that church, and then we ended up doing a dozen others before I left. But that's how kind of shifting my thinking. It's not just getting bigger, but really seeing leaders trained and multiplied and empowering them. And that to me became really my passion, is helping church planters and churches in that way. So in 2002, I left kind of kicking and screaming, but I knew it was God's will to go to Wisconsin. I never would have chosen to do this, but became president of a Bible college. It was an independent Baptist Bible college, and I ended up being there for 12 years. So, and that was an incredible experience. It was also probably one of the most challenging experiences of my life too. So when that came to a conclusion, I thought, what do I do? And I had a number of opportunities to go out there, as mainly like running organizations. And I thought, I do not want to be at the top CEO, managing people. I want to pastor. I want to preach and teach God's word, make disciples, pastors, and do church planting. So that's what led me to Valley, which was a church plant out of my original church, Tri-City. And the young guy was just really, really struggling. And he said, would you come out and help us? And so people then said, you're crazy. This time you're really crazy. But it's been been a great ride doing that too.
That's great. And so now you find yourself at Valley. You're been recently appointed or hired, whatever they call it, in the Southern Baptist, but you're the regional director of the Mile High Association for the Southern Baptist, which for our audience in our church is aware. If you're not aware, surprise. That's one of the denominations we're exploring to join. And so I wanted to hear from you, maybe, your own attraction to the Southern Baptist. You were in, is it IFB? Is it Independent Baptist? What would you call what you were in before?
Well, Independent Baptist, there's so many different variations of Independent Baptist. And the way that happened was when I was getting ready to go to seminary. At that time, most of the Southern Baptist seminaries were not doing well theologically. And the average church probably didn't know that, but I knew that. And so I made a decision, a choice to leave the Southern Baptist because of that and just go the independent route. And I learned a lot through that. There are a lot of great things about independence. They win people to Christ, make disciples. They're very zealous in a lot of things, missions and so forth, but they don't really work together. And they tend to divide over everything.
Hence the independent part, right?
Yeah, and so you really don't get a lot done. And so every time I'd go to a meeting, and I would be hoping for something better, but we'd be arguing over really what I would say stupid stuff, things that really don't matter. And I would always speak up, and I was kind of like the black sheep, always the black sheep. But I'd keep speaking up and hoping that it would work out until I got kicked out. And so I didn't have to try to keep making it work. But I found myself, I told my wife, I said, I've just lost 95% of my friends. And she said, those weren't your friends. And at the same time, my pastor, I grew up Southern Baptist. My pastor, who he was pretty upset with me when I left and became independent. And I thought he never wanted to see me again. But I was invited to his retirement back in Maryland. And everybody that was in the Southern Baptist world came, and they were telling the story about he and several other people went down to one of the seminaries and really rescued it. I mean, theologically. I mean, it was a complete and absolute turnover, Southeastern Seminary. And my pastor was at the forefront of that. And I realized then it was worth fighting for. I thought, you know what, I don't agree with things they're doing, and I just kind of quit and went independent, and he stayed and fought. Probably shortened his life, but he fought, and they replaced almost every single faculty member. And now Southeastern is really a great place to go. And so that was probably in '95 when I realized that, it's better, work through the issues, fight for them, be a voice, don't just go independent. Because now that I'm back, I realize just the strength of cooperating together. When I came into my first meeting here, the Mile High Association, which now I'm regional director of, I thought, finally, I mean, all these young guys planting churches and older guys that are helping them, and what they want to talk about winning people to Christ, making disciples, training leaders, planting churches. And I thought, finally, and so I got tapped early on to do some coaching for some of these planners, and that's kind of how I got back into the SBC. And it's not perfect. We can see the imperfections, but I think most of the time they're going to work toward right decisions, and because it's controlled by the churches, not by people up in the the ladder climbers, the people at the top. But so I kind of did my circle coming back, and now I find myself in the position of the regional director, which is really helping pastors and helping churches, realize their mission. I mean, what we just been talking about. Yeah. So, and I showed the job description to my wife, and she said, "That's what you love to do." I said, "I know that's what I love to do." I mean, sit down and have coffee with pastors, talk to them. How can we help them and connect them with resources? The SBC has incredible resources, and they fund those, and they still have a few odd people in them. It's like any other organization, but it's not driving it.
Yeah. I mean, so I want to hear about some of the things that are perks for being part of the SBC, but I think a real question that a lot of the people in our church and probably just in our state in general would have around the SBC is one of the reasons when we planted the well, we were non-denominational and we considered being a Baptist church, and that didn't work out, and we chose not to do that. And I know other churches that are SBC or other Baptist denominations that they work really hard to keep like the Baptist title out of their name because they don't want anybody to know.
Yep.
And so there's a lot of reasons for that. So what would you say to people who are like, man, I'm nervous about my church joining something like the SBC. Will this be bad for us? Will this taint our witness in any way or anything like that? What would you say to somebody saying that?
I understand, because when I said, I really felt convinced there are a number of organizations that I had considered working with, because I thought I'm not going to be independent anymore. So there are quite a few that I looked at, and the ones that really resonated the most with me were the Southern Baptist. For what we talked about, really aggressively going after winning the lost and making disciples, training leaders, and planting churches, and they're doing something about it. I mean, they're just getting stuff done. So that's how I kind of made that decision. I said, I only have a problem with two things. And so that's, well, what's that? I said, Southern and Baptist. Because when you're in Colorado, it may be different in other parts of the world, but when you say Southern, it immediately takes people to racism.
Yeah.
I mean, it's part of the past of the South and everything else, and so you got to deal with that. And the other word is Baptist. It's like punching someone in the nose. So you say, I'm Baptist. And I can tell you that if we were to have Southern or Baptist on our church sign, probably, I would say 75% of their people never would have visited in the first place. Now, as time goes on, they come in, they go through our membership, and we explain how we work. You can walk through that, but they're not great first impressions. And I like theological words. Some people can't; they'll choke on them at first. So, it's kind of bringing
just
them,
force them down.
That's right. That's right. But I mean, there's so many things we use, expecting people to see it from our perspective. But I'm not ashamed of being Baptist. I'm not ashamed of other words that would describe me. Sure. But probably for some people, I bring them along to that point. And don't hide it. Mm-hmm. I'm not ashamed at all. But that's one of them. So when you say Baptist or Southern in Lafayette, it's so we have Valley Community Church, and we
in Lafayette. You're in Boulder County, and we're in Boulder County. So we're quite. It's not the same as Boulder or as Louisville, because Lafayette, Louisville is progressively something, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So. But it is very different from being in Westminster.
Is it?
I mean, you asked about just the change. I mean, 20 years after leaving, coming back, culture's changed. I mean, just overall, drastically. But being in a different county where it's progressively that way is a lot more difficult and a lot slower. What I find is a lot of people would come to faith in Christ at first hearing of the gospel. Here it takes several, because they're just processing a lot. And yet we've seen fruit. I mean, it's not been as much, and it's not been as fast, but it has been really strong. And that's been exciting to see.
For sure. What are some of the things that maybe you would say, maybe 2 or 3 examples of how it's changed, or maybe how it's different? Matt moved here in 2005 to Colorado?
2003.
2003, and I've been here since 2009. So we've been around a little while, but you've got much more extensive experience than us in the state and doing ministry here and in Boulder County. And so what are some things you would highlight, how it used to be and how it is today? You mentioned the story of sharing the gospel maybe the first time and somebody comes to faith. What are some other things you might identify or challenges we face?
Yeah, I think that, back and I go back as far as when we first started, most people had some kind of faith background, whether either Catholic or whatever, but they had some view of God, some knowledge of God, some knowledge of Christ, some knowledge of the Bible, even like basic Bible stories. Today, it's like people don't know anything. And the real danger is if you come from another state to plant a church and you assume anything, you're probably wrong. And so You say, well, like Moses said, or, they don't know who Moses is. They don't know who Christ is. They don't know about the scriptures. They don't know about the authority of the scriptures. And so you really, and there's also a danger of dumbing down. If you go into the seeker model where we're just going to, what do people want? Well, they don't even know what they want. So there's we want to be friendly to people who are seeking, but we want to give the truth and not hold back, but yet it takes some time to get to certain places. So typically, you have theological language that I still like to use, but I take more time to explain it because a lot of people have no idea what you're talking about and that sort of thing. Whereas before, people would have some knowledge of what you're talking about. So that's been probably the biggest change.
It's funny. Just a quick story. I remember when we were first planting the well, I met a girl in a local coffee shop right off Pearl Street, and we got into a conversation while we were online, and she just had a bunch of interesting questions. She found out I was a pastor, and I was saying something, and I said, I brought up, when sin entered the world through Adam and Eve, and she goes, "Who's that?"
Yep.
I said, "Adam and Eve," and she goes, "Yeah, who? Like, there's somebody, where are they?" I'm like, "They're in the Bible." She's like, "Where?" I was like, "The beginning," and I had to go all the way back and explain to her who Adam and Eve were, which was, I'd been doing ministry in Gunnison, which was, kind of far out there, but that was like an eye opener for me. I was like, wow, okay, we've got some work to do here. And thanks to God, she was saved and baptized in our church and everything. But that was a learning opportunity for me. So I definitely see what you're saying there. Yeah.
I got a son that's out doing a replant in California, and I keep reminding him it's long, slow, and hard, but it's good. It's sweet, but it's in the culture we're living in today, most of these ideas are very foreign to them. And but they're people that are seeking. They're wanting to know the truth. They're wanting, to know what's authentic and real. So
it's good.
Yeah, but it's pretty exciting when you see the fruit that comes. But we kind of ding each other. We try to be honest when we review how we did last week. How much Christian language did you use that people have no clue? You're assuming. So we try to be brutally honest with that. So we train ourselves not to assume anything. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I'll go back to the South and hear someone, and it's like they assume everything.
Yeah,
and
must be nice.
Yeah,
that's funny. What might you say? You're talking to our church here, and it's this isn't necessarily to be sales or anything like that. But if a church were to join the Southern Baptist, and we've talked about this off air, but I just want our people to hear, what are some of the advantages with cooperation, especially in Colorado, with what God is doing in our state? What are some opportunities, advantages as a church joins the Colorado Baptist Convention that they would either get access to or resources or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm still getting my head around a lot of it. I didn't even know most of it until I took this job, and I started getting really excited about it. I knew that you get like half off with your seminary education, college education, whatever, any Southern Baptist institution, and most churches are not equipped to provide a seminary level training. Some are, but most are not. That's a big item. Church planting, funding for church planting, church revitalization, funding for that. The connections you have for grants and loans, because they have foundations that will give loans to churches. Say you're going to put up a building, and
that would have been really nice.
All of they're probably the most funded of any of the organizations out there. Even though I'm probably what I prefer in my philosophy of ministry and theology, I'm a little more narrow than the broader, because it's a fairly broad tent, but it doesn't go outside the bounds of, to me, a true gospel. And so they protect that and they fight for that. And there are other things that they'll fight for, and you'll see that. They are not perfect. I mean, you look over the last few years, and they've had some real dings on their on leaders, but I feel they've responded well. They've dealt with it, they've addressed it, and I'm encouraged by that. So it's far from perfect, but within the Southern Baptist, you're going to have more that are of your persuasion, your thinking, or your style of doing ministry. And so that's, we've talked a little bit about that, and you build some great friendships in there, like within the Southern Baptist Convention. And, the resources to me go far just beyond money, but the people you get to know and what they can connect you with, that sort of thing. So
one of the things I think about too is I was always, I think appropriately jealous in a way was, our city in particular, it seems like almost every 5 years we have some sort of natural disaster event that goes on, and our church has responded really well. It's something that I really like to hang our hat on, that without really any resources other than just what we have, we've done a lot. But from what I understand, in the SBC, Southern Baptist Convention, they're able to resource really well on like disaster relief sort of things, right?
Yeah, and it's quick. And, I love Samaritan's Purse. I love what they're doing. I mean, and we've worked with them before, but the difference is SBC will fund you helping your city. And they don't ask a lot of questions. I mean, they say, what do you need? I mean, I was kind of surprised. And so when I called them, I said, what are you going to come in and do? And it's like, I was kind of thinking, you'll come in and save the day. No, you go save the day. You tell us what you need. And I like that approach because the church is in the community. The church knows the people. And you're not going to pack up and leave after the disaster relief is over. So I've seen that several times here. We had the flood, we've had the fires, and anything you need in community, the Send Relief is quick to act on that. Same with needs that everyday needs in the community with the people that are homeless and marginalized and that sort of thing.
That's great. And then, just so that people get kind of a grasp of maybe the scale and the impact here in Colorado, what's kind of the best guess on, how many churches in Colorado are associated with the SBC?
I believe it's 370 churches that are with the whole state, and there are 10 regions, and a lot of those are in the mountains, and I mean, they're spread apart. The Mile High, which I'm with, would be Boulder and Denver, and all the suburbs. So probably 130, I'm still getting my head around it, but probably over 130 churches. And you have almost every nation of the world represented. So you go over to Aurora in downtown Denver, you find the Vietnamese and the Korean and all of the countries in Africa, and it kind of blows my mind. And they're all SBC, and they don't even speak my English. Some of them. I was with a group of probably 8 Hispanic pastors, and they were telling me what they're doing. I was with a group of Ethiopian pastors. There are 52,000 Ethiopians in Denver.
Really?
And these guys their churches are just thriving, and it's amazing. And I thought our church, Valley, and probably the Well, needs to know about what's going on right in our Judea here and get excited about it. So that's been, to me, a real enlightening thing, because I'm pretty much been in Boulder and Westminster and Broomfield, and it's kind of white collar professional type, and you've got a lot else things going on
There's
here.
a lot going on.
Yeah. I'm curious, I knew we'd get along because you have a great name, Matt. And so I knew we'd be fine. Your parents were very wise. But our church knows we've always been kind of a quirky church. Chase and I are different personalities and so on and so forth. And one of the things I love about our church is they are really concerned about our pastors, our staff, things like that. And so if a church like us, like we're exploring joining the SBC, I think a question that people might have is, and I know you're still getting to know us a little bit, but maybe talk about would we fit in, like a young church like us in Boulder, with 2 what people might call spicy pastors.
A little bit, yeah.
Would a church like the Well fit into an organization like the SBC?
Well, that's I think the nice thing about the SBC is that you have churches that have a lot of capacity, like yours does, with your leadership, of not just with your local church, but in planting, revitalization, training, developing theology, writing. And I feel like the capacity that you have to impact the Boulder area and the world at large is great. And I think God's given you that passion to, we need people that can articulate and speak up to the issues, and to do it in the right way. And everybody's going to do it a little differently, but that is so needed. And seeing you as a resource to help other pastors, how do we handle this? We feel like we're getting overrun by our culture. And I'm actually speaking next week at a family conference, and it's about how do we deal with the culture affecting our kids and our homes and families. And so I think those things are very important, and not every pastor is skilled at articulating that. You guys spend a lot of time dealing with a lot of those issues.
I don't know if we're skilled.
Yeah.
We're figuring it out.
Yeah.
We're being refined.
Yeah. But there's a need for boldness and articulation and clarity and unflinching approach to it. And we also want to reflect the spirit of Christ, and to be able to do all of that is not easy. So having conversations with others I find very helpful. How are we going to deal with this? And at the end of the day, I used to tell it at our college because we were coming under fire a lot, and I'd say, at the end of the day, we do the right thing. You got to do the right thing. You keep a right spirit as best as you can. You keep a Christ-like spirit, and then leave the results to God. And sometimes it may cost you. Most often it will cost you something. But when you have other voices speaking to you in that you trust, that are theologically focused and biblically focused, I think that really helps. And I think you guys have a lot of capacity to be able to help in that.
Great.
Well, this was a great conversation. Hopefully it blessed you, listeners of the Well Church, and anybody else who's listening. There's a lot going on in the Southern Baptist world. I grew up in it. My wife grew up in it. Matt did not grow up in it.
I did not.
He grew up in a bar. So
quite the opposite.
So I've really enjoyed this conversation, and hopefully it blessed you guys out there. And if you have any questions, just shoot us an email, or I'm sure you could go visit Valley and hit up Matt over here at Valley. But Matt, thank you so much for coming on the show today. This was great.
Appreciate you guys very much.
Thanks so much for joining us today, and we'll see you next time here on Just Say It.